Ooh. Magic.
Let me ask you something, my little lardy Twinkie. Have you gotten deep into the study of sorcery on your first journey across the lands between? If your answer to my question is yes, then I have a follow-up one. Was your journey an easy one? Because if we go by what the majority of the internet says, then we could safely assume that you had a really easy time with the game, right? While the claim that magic makes the game easier might be true to some extent just by looking at the mechanic at face value, one does have to wonder, how much does magic truly lower the game's difficulty? Both for PvE and PvP, of course. Because claims and posts talking about how magic was always incredibly overpowered for anything in Souls games are found by the dozen, and they come from way back in the day of older Souls games. For example, have you ever heard of Dark Bead Tarnished? It was a spell released in the Dark Souls 1 DLC that would shoot several orbs of darkness in a cone. The thing with Dark Bead is that each little orb dealt massive amounts of damage and it would come out super fast. If you got hit by Dark Bead at point blank, it was almost like getting shot right in the face with a shotgun. It was truly unmatched and quite possibly the best sorcery in the franchise. Or maybe you've heard about hexes in Dark Souls 2.
Bye, guy. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Bam. Oh my god. What have I done?
Dark Souls 3 didn't have anything spectacular regarding magic, so that leaves us only with Elden Ring. But before we go all Harry Potter on every sentient being we encounter in an 80-mile radius, we need to thoroughly explain how magic works. First of all, we have to make it very clear that when we refer to magic, we are actually talking about sorceries or spells that require intelligence and only intelligence to function. Because aside from some specific incantations, the ones that get the most hate are intelligence spells. Magic is mostly comprised of offensive spells with the very occasional utility or buffing spell. You can cast magic by using one of the many staff found in the game. Depending on which staff you use, you get additional bonuses such as the meteorite staff for gravity magic, staff of loss for night sorcery, and Voldemort's wand for making your nose disappear faster. Each spell is different and has its own properties, although some spells are basically just an enhanced version of another spell. You can use said spells by allocating them in your spell slots, which can be increased by finding memory stones. Once you have your spell set, and you have the necessary stats to use both your spell and your staff, that's when the magic happens. There's a huge variety of spells to choose from, but as with every game ever created, some spells are way better than others. For instance, between the teeny tiny Swift Glintstone Shard and the big, veiny Comet, you will always pick Swift Glintstone Shard.
What?
Jokes aside, in PvE, Comet is very strong because of the damage and range, but in PvP, Swift Glintstone Shard is a very good poking tool. Almost illegal how good it is, but not for in real life laws. Oh no. But for overweight smelly onions locked up in their parents' basement, because for some really undesirable orcs, playing as a mage in PvE means that you didn't beat the game properly, and playing as a mage in PvP will sometime get you death threats. I don't think I have to point out the obvious, but if someone wants to play their own PvE game by using only magic, there's nothing wrong with that. But let's entertain the argument for a moment. How much does magic really lower the game's difficulty? Let's start with PvP this time, since it's much easier to test. Let's first point out the fact that if your enemy has over 180 ping, which, if you play on PC, will most likely be the case, all they have to do when you shoot your magic pew-pews is the spam the roll button without a care in the world. No need for timing, no need for anticipating mix-ups, nothing. Just press the circle button and all is well. You will waste all of your FP and they will never run out of stamina, of course. You're not a mage anymore, you're just a squib, like Filch. People really like to complain about magic spam, when 90% of the times the solution is roll spam. If by any chance you find someone that has good latency with you, while you'll have the ability to mix up and roll catch them, be sure that they will be able to interrupt your spellcasting more comfortably and without fear of trading into a comet. You still have to play carefully and think about what your next move will be, and hope that you don't run out of blue juice by the end. Having played with a magic build quite a bit, I'd say that the best spells to have are Swift Glintstone Shard for pressuring, Shard Spiral for pressuring and mix-ups, Comet for punish or trading, and Star Shower to finish up an enemy. Maybe Gavel of Heimer to trade with someone, but it's just way too slow to consistently land it. Carrion Slicer is not bad either, but a weapon with low requirements infused with magic, such as the Shamshir for example, provides the same effect with no FP cost and more poise damage. And of course, defensive incantations and items that mitigate magic damage make it all much more difficult to fight gamers in PvP. So, the vast majority of options are reduced to merely a few spells that can compete against the most sweaty of setups, and just barely. I'd say that magic is not so great for dueling, to be honest. We won't be defeating any Dark Lords with this. Unless you use magic in a gank squad, then it becomes the most obnoxious thing in the whole universe. However, when talking about PvE, things become quite different. Merely in the early game, you can obtain the Meteorite Staff along with the Rocksling Gravity Sorcery. The Meteorite Staff has an S scaling with Intelligence and is already maxed up. Rocksling is a gravity spell that is a bit slow to cast but deals very good damage and very good stance damage, which helps a lot for the early game bosses. Progressing through the game and obtaining what I consider to be the best sorceries for dealing with bosses is not too difficult either. Sorceries like Comet, Shard Spiral, Comet Azure, Terra Magica, and Swift Glintstone Shard are quite easy to obtain. There are even some sorceries designed specifically for enemies or bosses that would evade normal sorceries, like Comet, for example. They're called Night Sorceries. And to top it off, obtaining the best staffs in the game, such as the Carrion Regal Scepter and Luzat's Glintstone Staff, is easy too, with the latter being used for one of the most cheese-worthy combos in the game. My favourite magic meme is spamming Shard Spiral against Placidus Axe. It's quite funny, to be honest. However, here's the thing. After testing magic against some of the late game areas and bosses, I don't think I felt much of a difference when comparing it to other dedicated builds designed to melt enemies too. Bleed is still strong. Buff stacking is still strong. What? Some Ashes of War melt bosses too. Great bows have more range and work better against enemies that are far away, and so on and so on. Going through areas as a mage doesn't feel much more different than doing it on a melee build. In fact, going full Expelliarmus on the mobs felt worse than brute forcing my way through the area. Not to mention that you can run out of FP rather quickly, and you would have to sacrifice HP and healing flasks for more magic, unless you level up without limits, which still makes any build super strong. Now, considering that PvP is really the only game mode where you can complain about what other players do, and taking into account the fact that magic has not been overpowered in PvP since Dark Souls 2, and that's me being generous. Why do gamers despise magic so much? Magic has garnered quite of a negative reputation among the community during the course of years. Many gamers think that beating the game as a mage doesn't constitute as really beating it. But not only that doesn't add up due to all the other equally strong or stronger alternatives that I've mentioned, it is also incredibly cringeworthy to shame someone for merely using a different playstyle than yours to beat the PvE part of the game. Whining about that only makes you seem like a big loser and no one else. To an outsider, it merely seems that you took on a self-imposed fictional challenge in order to stroke your ego and make yourself feel superior to other gamers. Learn to have some humility, for moon's sake. You know who you can learn from? Learn from Otstava. The guy beat Dark Souls 2 by defeating every boss in the game without taking a single hit. And everyone loved him for that. Not because he stepped into every conversation about Dark Souls 2 shaming other people for not accomplishing what he did, but because he took on the challenge with a very humble attitude and didn't brag about it when he finally completed the task. I could easily tell you to go and do what Otstava did if you think you're a true Souls master, but that'd be stepping down to your level. So to put it simply, Tarnished, just play the game and let other people play. Don't go through life being an insufferable snob. And that's gonna be it for today. Remember to sleep 8 hours a day, and as always, thanks for watching.